Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please consider leaving a review or a rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and it really helps the show reach more lost families. Today's grief tip is to give yourself grace. It sounds so simple, yet something so many of us don't do. We expect ourselves to get back to, quote, normal. We expect too much from ourselves. We don't give ourselves the space we need to heal. It's okay if your grief doesn't look like someone else's. It's okay if you can't go back to work for a while. It's okay if you want to go back to work right away. We all have different ways of coping, and there is no right way or wrong way. There's no guidebook to how we should act after losing a baby or how we should feel after losing a baby. Give yourself the grace you need to figure out exactly how you need to grieve. Be kind to yourself physically and emotionally as you navigate through the healing process. So today's business spotlight is Isabella's Coffee, which was started by lost mom Marissa. Here is what she had to say.
Hi, I'm Marissa, and recently my husband and I started our coffee business, Isabella's Coffee. Isabella's Coffee is named after our first baby, our daughter, Isabella, who passed away while I was 5 months pregnant. Losing Isabella was the hardest and most heartbreaking thing we had ever gone through, but it also taught us so much. We no longer wanted to wait for tomorrow. Isabella inspired us to go after our dream of starting a small coffee business, something we had spoken about for years. We are so proud to offer quality coffee that is organic, fair trade, and sustainably and ethically sourced, all while getting to honor our baby girl, our beautiful Isabella. One of my favorite things about supporting other small businesses is getting to know the stories about the people behind them. Through Isabella's Coffee, we hope that other parents and families in the lost community will hear our story and it will help them to feel a little less alone. Our coffee has been our little cup of comfort through the most difficult of times. From the bottom of our hearts, we hope it can bring you some of that comfort as well. Thank you so much for listening. For more information, you could visit our website or our Instagram at isabellas.coffee.
Thank you so much, Marissa, for sharing your business with us. So today I am talking with Grace. She had to terminate for medical reasons at 13 weeks due to her baby not being viable. And then she went on to have one rainbow baby. She wrote a book called Behind My Smile, A Rainbow Baby Story. Grace is now on a mission to advocate doctors and healthcare providers about the loss and pregnancy after loss experience. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Grace. Grace, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Grace. I live in New York. I am a mother to one living child, and by trade, I'm a teacher. I work primarily with teaching children how to read, which kind of helps because I ended up writing a book. So reading and writing goes hand in hand in my life. I also, as I mentioned, a lost mom. So my son is a rainbow baby, and it's the worst group to be part of, but the best members ever.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. It's a club none of us ever wanted to be a part of, but yeah, full of so many amazing people.
Yes, so I can't believe the support and love and compassion that I have gotten from people in the lost community as well as the rainbow baby community.
So can you talk a little bit about your loss?
Sure. So in October of 2018, I found out that I was pregnant, and so excited at getting ready and doing all the things, and went for the first ultrasound, and everything just fell out from underneath me because found out there were some issues on the ultrasound. One thing led to another, and there were references and tests and more references and more tests, and our daughter was not viable to continue. So we were given two options, one of which was to let nature run its course or end the pregnancy. And we didn't want anyone suffering, including our daughter, especially our daughter. So we ended the pregnancy at 13 weeks.
I'm so sorry that you had to, face that diagnosis and even face that decision at all. That's something no parent should ever have to face.
No, yeah, I often say it was simultaneously the hardest and easiest decision of my life because my daughter was not going to survive at all. Um, so we didn't, that was the I guess easy part because we didn't want her to suffer. We didn't want to suffer. We didn't want to risk losing myself and her in the process of letting nature run its course. So that was, the like I said, the easy part, but it was the hardest part because how do you really sign off on saying yes, you want to do this? Um, and everything, it just is this horrific tug of war in your brain going through that process.
Well, and I feel like too that, people who have had to terminate for medical reasons, that a lot of people are super judgy of that decision. Is
Yep.
that something that you faced at all?
Um, Not from family or friends, but from some outsiders. Um, I did get criticized, but oddly enough, a lot of people who are very religious and believe that life is life at conception were surprisingly supportive, and said, I get it. You know, you made the most humane and loving decision. And I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions about terminating for medical reasons is it is one of the most loving things that you can do. I recently was on a different podcast and we were talking about the fact that terminating from medical is basically the equivalent of taking someone off of life support. And I was like, wow, that is really such a great way of explaining it because, yes, you know, no, but, some people would say, all right, you know what? They're suffering, they're in pain, they're dying, etc., etc. You know what? Don't necessarily agree with it, but I get it. Same thing with termination for medical with a pregnancy is baby's going to die, mother could possibly die. How many bodies do you want to bury?
Yeah.
So that's why I think there needs to be a lot more open discussion on termination for medical reasons because it's not something we want to do. You're really backed in a corner.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that when you're at that crossroad, that there is no good decision. There is no good way forward. Either way you go, it's going to be horrible.
Exactly. So it's the path of least destruction. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize and they don't hear. And that's why I'm really trying to open those conversations and get on podcasts and social media and, really open up this topic of pregnancy loss and termination for medical reasons and pregnancy after loss. And we need to normalize all of this.
Yes, we really do. I think people, so many more people than what we even know have had to go through a termination. And you probably don't know because they're too scared to talk about it because they're too
Exactly.
scared of what people will, think of them or,
Yeah, exactly. And that brings me to the point which I mentioned earlier. I wrote a book and I recently published it called Behind My Smile, a Rainbow Baby Story. And it is a very raw and real accounting of what it is like as a mother going through pregnancy loss and pregnancy after loss and the panic, the anxiety, everything that goes through your head. But one of the main reasons I published it is I really want to educate the medical community on what it's like for parents of loss.
where can people buy your book if they're interested?
It's on Amazon. You can get it in ebook or in print.
I think that is such an important thing because it kind of depends on, luck of the draw. You could end up with a really great doctor. You could end up with a doctor who doesn't care. And, there's no like standard across the
Right.
board. Like this is how we treat lost parents.
Exactly. And I ran into that so much. In the introduction of my book, I talk about the fact that one time I was at a routine appointment. It was about 14 or 16 weeks along, and the nurse was just so excited. She's this peppy cheerleader, and I'm trying not to lose my mind. And she's just happily chatting away, asking me questions, and I'm thinking, shut up, please just stop talking. Like, I'm gonna run out screaming if you don't.
Probably like nails grating.
And finally at one point she goes, "Oh, do you know what you're having?" And I was like, "All right, I'm just gonna lay it out there." I said, "I'm having a rainbow baby." She said, "Oh, that's so wonderful." You have no idea what that is, do you? She's like, "What is it?" I said, "That means I recently lost a baby and I'm pregnant again and I'm really scared." Oh,
Yeah. Fear in
all
the
the
headlights.
color drained out of her face, her everything about her changed, and she was like, watching that realization, and she immediately changed everything, all of her tone, and she said, "Do you have any specific questions for doctors?" "Okay, thank you, bye." And she like left a smoke trail. And I thought to myself, a simple little 2-inch line on my medical chart could have changed all of that if it had said rainbow pregnancy
Mhm.
or pregnancy after loss, anything, any indication that I had lost to pregnancy and I was now pregnant again. So that when they look at me, they can realize, oh, sensitive.
Yes.
Let's approach this with a little bit more, you know, empathy and sympathy. And instead of being all happy and chipper, let me lead the conversation. And you can just say, "How are you doing today?" And then let me go from there, or let whomever go from there.
I think that is the perfect approach. And, I found, unfortunately, in my experience, that even if it's in the chart, sometimes they still don't read it because we had moved to Georgia. I gave birth to my others in Texas, but then I gave birth to my last one in Georgia. And I had to go through all my history, all my losses, and all of that. And they still kept saying, "You've had 3 miscarriages." And I was like, "No, I had a 32-week stillbirth. That is not the same as a miscarriage, And I kept having to like correct them over and over. And I just found that experience like really frustrating because they weren't listening.
Yes, I ran into something very, very similar when I was pregnant with my son, because they said, "All right, we're going through the age and my history and everything." And they're like, "All right, how many pregnancies have you had?" So we're going over that. And they're like, "So how many miscarriages have you had?" And I said, "Well, unfortunately, I had to terminate for medical reasons." "Okay, so one abortion." "No, that was a medical termination." "Well, did you miscarry?" "No." "Was it a stillborn?" "No." "Did it die after birth?" "No." "Okay, one termination."
Like
And
language matters, people. Like language is important.
yes, yes, it really is. And I'm sitting there already terrified being pregnant, and I got pregnant very quickly after I lost my daughter. So I'm deep in the throes of grieving my daughter, and whoops, I am pregnant again. I didn't know what to feel, what to think, what to do. Forgot how to breathe while blinking, like I basic human functions of this is how we breathe in and out. Couldn't handle those at times. Um, so going through, and they're like, "All right, so you had one abortion. Okay, how many live pregnancies?" And it's like, just stop talking to me.
Like this isn't helping,
It's not. Um, but it wasn't just the doctors, it was more like the nurses, the technicians, um, the, the ultrasound technicians, people who drew my blood. It was just so frustrating. They're like, it's like, just shut up.
You're like, it's really, really hard to talk about being excited. Like I want to be excited. I do, but
Yes,
you
yes, I
don't know what
want to
you've
be.
been through.
Yeah. And, it just, some of them were they tried to be helpful, and they would say, well, you know what, this is a different situation and you're gonna be fine. And it's like, thank you for that feeble attempt. I do appreciate it. Maybe in a few hours or days or weeks I'll be able to accept that, but for now I'm just gonna grit my teeth.
Did you
You know.
find that the medical staff was supportive when you had to go through your termination?
So, interesting fact about that, my insurance company denied me coverage for my termination because it went against their Christian beliefs. So, any and all coverage that would have been necessary for a, discrete hospital termination was denied. So, I had to go to a clinic. Um, it was I mention it all in my book, all the things that I went through. Excuse me. The staff in the clinic were amazingly helpful and supportive, and I hate to say that I had a wonderful experience, but the staff really just, they were on point when they found out what was happening and why, and they're like, what are you doing here? And I said, my insurance won't cover any of this. And they turned white with horror because of just knowing how stressful and traumatic this is, and then being there and just adding to everything. And matter of fact, the doctor who did the procedure, he said, I'm so sorry that the medical community failed you. um, but yeah, the clinic staff was very, very supportive. Other staff, I don't know, because I didn't get to have the private, discreet hospital procedure that I had hoped I could have in that situation.
And I'm not sure what state you live in, but I know, that kind of varies from state to state, the deadlines that you're up against for
I
weeks.
live in New York, so the deadline was within acceptable limits, but I had to, it just, I mean, either way, it wasn't going to be, and that's where I say, thankfully, very hesitantly, that it was at 13 weeks, because if I was a few weeks more, I would have not been able to go to the clinic. And I would have needed that hospital procedure, which means I would have needed to pay out of pocket for all expenses.
Just like, you don't need that financial burden on top of the emotional and physical stuff that you're already going through. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah. And my mouth hung open when I was on the phone with the insurance company. Because I had called the doctor's office or the hospital. I was like, I need to schedule the procedure to determine, to end my pregnancy. And they're like, double check with your insurance first. Okay. Not thinking anything of it. I call and they're like, yeah, we're not going to cover that. And I'm like, did you hear the words that just came out of my mouth? Like, this is medically necessary. Yeah, no, I heard, but we can't cover it.
Like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. And that particular insurance is nationwide.
Oh, really?
And it's a state-run insurance. It's not a private. So that's why I was like, this just did not make sense to me at all.
Well, I'm really sorry that you had that experience too, just to, add to the stress of it all. Like, here, let's just dump one more thing on you.
Yeah, I really felt like at that time I just could not catch a break at all. It wasn't even death by 1,000 paper cuts; it was death by 1,000,000 paper cuts. And they're like, "Here, have some more."
Was your recovery time very long after that?
Um, Out of, I guess, shock and necessity, because because I teach and I was a substitute at the time. I actually went to work the day after the procedure because I needed to for financial reasons. And um it was just, I mean, physically I was okay. Mentally, no. I was not okay at all, but I just mustered through. And um speaking to people in the loss community and the pregnancy after loss community, that seems to be something that we often do. We just muster through, like, all right, it's Tuesday, let's get to work, let's do our thing, and just shove all of the pain and the hurt and everything down. It's like, I'll deal with that later.
Yep, I'm guilty of that. I actually went back to work a week after my loss because of similar reasons. Like I didn't have unlimited PTO. I didn't have time off. I couldn't afford to take all this time off, and I think that's something unfortunately a lot of us face.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard from a lot of lost moms that they were actively miscarrying at work, and did either didn't ask their boss if they could go home or were denied leave to go home. um I know a friend who was miscarrying, and it was her second miscarriage, and her boss gave her a hard time and said that basically if she didn't show up to work she was going to be fired. And he said to her, well, this is your second miscarriage, you should already be fine with this. And it's like, this is not, I call it, this is not popping a pimple where just you pop and it's done. Like, this is a heavy process all the way around.
I hear things like that, and I'm like, do people really say these things? Like so many horrible things I've heard, and I'm just like, I cannot believe that would come out of somebody's mouth.
Yeah.
Like it's just,
Yeah. And on a similar topic to that is how people don't really approach when someone says they've lost a pregnancy, um, with sensitivity or grace or dignity or any of that. Like if someone says, oh, my father and my mother passed away, I'm so sorry, my deepest condolences. Oh, I lost a job, I'm so sorry, how can I help you? Is there anything that you need? Oh, my dog died. And it's like, oh, that's a terrible feeling. My pregnancy, my pregnancy ended. Are you going to try again? Hi, totally inappropriate response.
what it is about pregnancies and babies that makes it somehow different.
It's like if someone says, oh, my husband died. Are you gonna get married
Like,
again? And that's that type of response for pregnancy loss, where when someone finds out you've lost a pregnancy, it's like, oh, are you gonna try again? Well, at least you can have fun trying. At least. No, keep your at least comments to yourself, and just stick to the same script that you would for any other loss. I'm sorry about your loss. How can I help you?
yes,
Approach
exactly.
the same way, and that's part of why I want to normalize this topic, because even as silly as it may sound, there are greeting cards for everything, sympathy cards for everything. Nothing for a baby.
Like we're just supposed to pretend like it doesn't happen and just move on and be normal and not talk about it. And
Yeah, just sweep it under the carpet and put on that happy face and just go back to work. And and it's like, no, it is not like that at all. um and the fact that people can get bereavement time for loss of pets, but they can't get enough time to cover um loss of a pregnancy.
yes, I mean, yeah, that says a lot right there.
Exactly. And that so many people won't take it or don't think they can. And it's like, well, um I have it's like, I have a medical necessity. Well, what is it? Oh, I lost a pregnancy. Okay, so come back to work. It's like, no, that's not okay. And the frequency at which this happens, pregnancy loss, approximately 1 in 4 women are going to experience pregnancy loss in their childbearing years. So when we think about those odds, I mean, this really needs to be addressed.
It
It's
does. I mean, even if people don't know it, they know somebody who has gone through a loss. Everybody, I'm sure, knows at least one person who has gone through a loss. And yet
yeah,
we just want to pretend like it doesn't happen.
yeah. There's something about pregnancy loss and infant loss that it is just the can't go there topic. And the problem is for those that are experiencing those losses, we need you there. We need you there so much. We need you to ask us how we're doing, ask us if we need help, sit with us, do those things, and keep your at least bright light comments to yourself. You wouldn't say that to somebody who lost a spouse or a parent. Don't say it to someone who's lost a child.
I think that's the thing too that people need to really understand is that you just have to show up. Don't disappear. Don't go silent on us. Like don't abandon us when we need you. That's the
Yeah.
worst thing you can do. I find that worse than even the insensitive comments is the just disappearing.
Yes. And they're like, well, I didn't know how to handle it. Well, you didn't ask.
And do you think I know how to handle it? Like going through it?
It did not come in the manual of things on what I was supposed to experience in life. I'm figuring this out too.
Right, exactly. People are crazy. Like I swear I lost, like it really teaches you who is there for you and who isn't, and it's never the people you think it's gonna be.
Exactly. I had a large exodus of friends with my loss and my subsequent pregnancy. And even my son actually almost died at 6 weeks old due to a major illness, was hospitalized. And during that time, I found out way more of who my friends were and were not. And it's sad. It's also in disguise a good thing because you do find it's like, oh, wait, this person that I've known for X number of years and I just thought we were, so friends is actually a really good friend.
Yes. I found that too. Some people that I didn't even really talk to before, or, just kind of acquaintances. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, we have both been through this. Like, and then you become like really good friends. And I've made
Yeah.
a lot of like really good friends in the lost community. And I wish we had been connected under different
Different.
circumstances, but glad to know them now.
Yes, same here. Absolutely. And, um, I went through that when my son was in the hospital. I had a friend who was 15 minutes away from the hospital and never once called to check on me, my son, nothing. 15 minutes away,
Wow.
nothing. And then an acquaintance of mine who I'd known for several years made sure to call and text. She even stopped by and brought us food and supplies. And it's like, I didn't realize you were such a good person. And, she's way younger than I am, but she just knew, like, this is what you do for someone who's hurting.
I love that. I love those people that just show up,
Mhm.
especially when you didn't even ask them to, they just do it.
Exactly. It was just like, wow. So amazing.
So, in talking about pregnancy after loss, was there anything that you found that helped you get through that time, through the anxiety and through the
Keeping busy and focused was very, very helpful because when I sat quietly, I had a much harder time because that's when my thoughts would run wild. And I know it's not as common to become pregnant right after a loss, but it does exist. Um, so it was just so many different types of anxiety happening all at once. I did do some journaling, not much. It was just a couple sentences a day, something I was thankful for, um, something that I did that was positive, just little things like that. Um, and as strange as it sounds, avoiding the baby section of stores. Um,
No, I get that. It's hard to make plans when you're scared.
Yes.
You don't want to, I mean, even though you won't jinx it, you still feel like you're going to, if you buy something, if you plan for them to come home, if you
Yep.
name them, if you do anything.
Yep. Yeah. We chose not to know the gender until birth because I was just like, I had lost a daughter, and I guess I hoped I would have a daughter. And I, it's not that I didn't want a boy. I was just so brokenhearted from losing my daughter that I really wanted my daughter back. Um, so we chose not to know the gender. And my husband was he's like, why can't we find out? Why do we need to know? We have to plan. Plan what? Uh, Give me one good reason why we need to know the gender, and I'll consider it. Well, we got a plan. Plan what? Nope. No, we don't need to know. Nursery colors, car seat colors, that stuff does not need to know. No, it doesn't matter whether it's pink, blue, or polka dot.
You're
Doesn't
like, I just want the healthy baby. That's all I want.
a baby. Um, it was hard for a lot of people when they were like, "Well, what are you having?" Don't know. How do you not know? Simple. I asked. I don't want to know.
I know
Well,
people can't understand it.
it would drive me crazy. Well, it's kind of driving me crazy too. Well, then why don't you find? I don't want to. Well, that doesn't make sense to me. Well, it doesn't have to.
It's not your decision, not your pregnancy, not your baby. So,
Yep. When I
well,
was
go ahead.
when I was teaching, I was in a leave replacement at the time, and then I hadn't told anyone I was pregnant. And then, I got closer and closer to my due date, and all of a sudden, my stomach is growing. And finally, a couple of the students are like, "Are you pregnant?" Yes, I am. And they asked me the same thing. Well, what are you having? I said, a baby. They of course couldn't understand not knowing. So I would mess with them, and they're like, "Did you find out? Could be an elephant." I think it's a dolphin. So I would just kind of change it up and be like, "It's a shark. It's a baby shark."
I love it. That's cute.
Yeah.
So did you think of like a boy name and a girl name, or did you not think of names until?
Well, I had a dream um after my daughter passed and before I found out that I was pregnant, and a name was revealed in my dream. And I said, well, if we have a girl, that will be her name. And I told my husband, I said, I'm not going to bend on it. He said, okay. And he chose a boy name, which I absolutely hated. That you got to read about in the book because it's a funny story. um, and people, some people asked us, like, well, do you have names picked out? Yes. Are you going to tell us? No. I found a lot of people in the lost community struggle with the names because of their deceased babies and pressure from families. I would often tell people, tell them no, or keep changing it every time. Or come up with the most ridiculous name you can think of and stick with that and tell them it's going to be something like Zanzibar, Ezekiel, something. Who cares? It's nobody's business except your own and your partner, and that's it.
I feel like people who haven't been through loss just don't understand. They're just like, they don't understand what it is that we're going through, what we're thinking. And so, they expect us to have it like a normal pregnancy, and it's not.
Not at all. I didn't sleep. I didn't relax the entire 9 months of my pregnancy. Everything I tried to do to help myself relax just was not easy because I could get my body to chill, but not my brain. And
Hard part.
yeah, and there was very little I could do to get my brain to relax because most of the medications and options that were available, that can actually do that, you can't have while you're pregnant.
I know, it's like a double-edged sword there. Like I really need this, but obviously I don't want to risk the baby's health. But yeah, that does
Exactly.
make it hard.
Yeah. The exercise was very helpful, and just like I said, trying to keep busy, doing some journaling here and there, lesson planning for school. making photocopies. I don't know,
Just busy
any
work, right?
any sort of busy work. Coloring too. I have to say, coloring was very, very helpful. I would get like the mandala coloring books, and I would just kind of like immerse myself in those.
I like those. Those are fun. Those are relaxing.
They are really, really fun. My sister had gotten me the curse word coloring book.
Oh, I've seen that one.
I love that one too, because there are some days you need a curse word instead of a flower.
Right. And I'm guessing, especially with your job, you're not like cussing all day at work. So,
No, only in my head.
right. So,
Yeah.
is there any other advice that you have for people who are going through loss or pregnancy after loss?
Um, Take pictures. That is one thing I have seen a lot of people regret is they say they wish they had taken pictures. Take the pictures, because if things don't work out, you can set them aside and you still have them. But once that moment passes, you cannot recreate it. So do take your pictures. Um, Set your boundaries. Set your boundaries of what is and is not okay, and stick to it. If you are experiencing a pregnancy after loss and you do not want to say what the names are, what the gender is, any of that, don't. Don't be pressured. Stick to your boundaries, stick to your limits. And lastly, look, there is help out there. You're not alone. Find help somehow. Search on Google, go on Facebook, anything, because there are amazing and wonderful lost moms and lost communities out there that can help you. And we're here for you.
Kind of going off of that, did you find it hard to find resources after your termination, or were you able to find like specific groups for other parents who had gone through that?
When I went through my termination, I I was given one reference, which was a Facebook group called EWP, Ending a Wanted Pregnancy. And it was helpful because all of the members had experienced loss at some point, whether it was 6 weeks, 36 weeks, 6 weeks after birth, all of them had experienced loss. So it was nice to have that camaraderie. But when I became pregnant with my son, it was difficult to keep hearing those loss stories. So I was redirected to a Facebook group called PALS, which is Pregnancy After Loss Support.
I love them.
And again, it's all women who have lost pregnancies or babies and are now pregnant again. And I would oftentimes see what was in my head being written by someone else on the screen. And I'm like, how'd they do that? How'd they get in my brain?
It makes you feel not crazy, you know?
Yes. And then I would see 20, 30, 40 comments of people going, me too, me too, me too. And it's like, I'm not crazy. And so many times I would even just write in, thank you. Thank you for saying this. I'm not crazy. I'm not imagining this. This is a real feeling. Um, but it took time because I didn't get resources from my doctors. I was denied access to a postpartum group because I didn't have a baby. Yeah.
I don't even know what to say to that. That's just, I can't believe they would do that.
Yeah. They denied me access because I didn't have a baby. And it's like, but I'm postpartum because I am no longer pregnant. I was, now I'm not. I am postpartum. Um, there's another group called Postpartum Support International. Very, very helpful. They have a text line that you can call or text if you need to talk to somebody. It's 24/7, and amazing, amazing group. Highly recommend them as well. But yeah, there needs to be more open resources about pregnancy loss, pregnancy after loss, and termination for medical reasons, which is why I'm trying to do the things that I'm doing.
And I think it's great. I look forward to reading your book when I have some free time. It's kind of hard with kids, but but I do plan to read it.
Oh.
I spend my day working and then the night with the kids, so I'm like, I have very little free time to myself anymore. But
Totally get that. I'm, teaching and trying to do all the podcasting, and I would love to get into public speaking, especially at hospitals and medical centers, to help inform and educate not just doctors but medical staff on how to deal with lost parents, not just the moms but the husbands, the siblings, everybody.
that's a great mission. And I don't think a lot of people are really doing that. I think we
Yeah.
focus more on the lost families themselves, which is important, but I think
Mhm.
the medical community is important too.
Yes. And that's a goal of my book, is to teach anyone, not just be there for moms. Obviously I want to be there for the moms, but I want husbands and sisters and brothers and dads and moms, anyone. I want them to be able to read that book and go, okay, this is what they're going through. This is what they've been through. Okay, got it. This is horrible. This is how I need to help them. This is how I can help them.
So is there anything else that you'd like to share or add?
Um, Share your stories. Share your stories, because you never know who you are helping. You never know who you're inspiring. And I shared my story because I had hoped that my story of success could be somebody else's guide to survival.
I love that. That's, I always say if I help one person, I've done what I set out to do.
Exactly. And so put your stories out there, put everything out there, because we need each other.
So if people wanted to find out more information about you, where could they go for that?
They can go to Instagram, which my Instagram is at Grace Peterson RBM. RBM stands for Rainbow Baby Mom. And I am also on Facebook at Grace Peterson RBM. Look for the red daisy.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you. It was wonderful being here, and I'm hoping I can inspire some moms, parents, whomever.
Thank you so much, Grace, for sharing your story with us. We've talked about this before on the show, but I think it's worth bringing up again. Those who have to go through a termination for medical reasons are absolutely making the compassionate choice for their child. The decision is made out of love and not wanting their child to suffer. These are very wanted babies and very loved babies. There's no easy decisions in these situations. It's important that those who have gone through this share their stories, and that those who haven't been through it listen to these stories. It's something many have to go through, yet few truly understand. The bottom line is that termination for medical reasons parents deserve a voice in the community that is free of judgment. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please consider leaving a review or a rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more lost families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.